everyone. So I've played my first game of Congo with an opponent, and originally what I was going to do was film the game, and I played it with Pete from Mini Warzone, and I was going to sort of instruct him on camera as to the rules, and then convert that and edit it into a sort of tutorial on how to play Congo. But as it turned out, I spent too long over the explanation of the rules really, and didn't do it particularly coherently. So we recorded the game yesterday, and I filmed the sort of highlights at the end of each turn. So what I need to do before I show you that really is just to go through the basics of the game so that you understand what was going on. So the particular scenario we played involved these two factions here. What you're looking at the moment are the White Men expeditions, and over here this is the Forest Tribes faction. Now in Congo, you make up a faction or a column in groups, and some groups you're allowed to have more than one of, others are not, and each group will cost you a certain number of points. And for the particular scenario we played, you needed 70 points worth of Forest Tribes, but 90 points worth of White Men expeditions. And I have gone down the route of buying the Wargames Foundry box sets that have been made up specifically for the game, but they are only 70 points. So I had to supplement the White Men expeditions with some figures I already owned. So I chose to put these 4 figures on, and these actually represent a group of soldiers. I don't have any figures in uniform that are suitable at the moment. So I thought they were vaguely military looking in their appearance, so I've used those. So just to go through these briefly, for every column you can have up to 2 characters, and the characters don't cost you points. So in this particular scenario you are required to field the reporter, which is this guy here, and the explorer, which is this guy here. No, not the explorer, anything else you want, but I chose to put the explorer in there. So they don't cost you any points, but everything else does. So here I have a group of adventurers. Behind them, as I said a moment ago, a group of soldiers. These are a group of young warriors. These are a group of Askari. The guys in the red hats are trained Askari, and then behind them are a group of Ruga, who are a sort of mercenary type group. Now there's nothing to stop you changing this composition around. As I say, I've gone down the route of buying the Wargames Foundry box sets, but I'm certainly going to buy more figures and build up more groups, and that will give me the opportunity to change this composition, put other troop types in, take some out, add a couple of groups of a particular type if I want, and so on. So you're not tied in that way. And what you do with the character, the groups can't be increased in number, and they have to be played so that they're all in base-to-base contact, so that they maintain their unit cohesion. You don't play them with gaps of, say, a couple of inches between them like you would do in Saga. But the characters have to be attached to groups, and there are certain groups that you can't attach characters to. So, for instance, the adventurers can't have a character attached to them. And once they're attached to the group, they're assumed to have the weapon of the group, but they do retain their own characteristics in terms of shooting, bravery and combat in melee. More of that in a minute. And then over here, the Forest Tribes group. So my 2 characters are the Chieftain, who's this guy here, and the Witch Doctor. And I should say as well, yeah, that especially the characters, but some of the other groups have special rules attached to them. So they're rules that come into play at certain points in the game, and they differ from group to group if the group has a special rule. Right, then here, these guys are warriors. These guys are bunduki, who are armed with muskets. I've got a group of archers. And groups can also vary, while I'm on the subject, can also vary in terms of numbers. The adventurers are only 3. The archers here, as you can see, are 6 figures. Then I've got a group of 3 scouts, group of 6 pygmy, and the pygmy actually play with a number of special rules. One of them is they have a rule called bond, which means you actually play them as 2 separate groups that could be way apart on the table, and when you activate one group, the other group automatically activates as well. So they activate as a single group, but play as 2 separate groups of 3 figures each. And the guys at the back there with the red and white and black shields are young warriors again, same as this group over here. So that's another good case in point, that you can actually have different columns that are allowed to have similar troop types, but you can't always share. I mean, the forest tribes can have a group of cannibals. There's no way you can put the cannibals in with the white men expeditions. Right, now what else? I'll come on to the cards over here, I think. So the game is played using cards. So the rules come with a pack of cards which is split in 2, one for each player. So you have the green back cards and the sort of brown back cards. And in that you have 7 cards that are known as action cards, and they are all numbered. Now, the turn is divided into 3 action steps, and for each turn the player selects in secret 3 of these cards. So they're not dealt from a deck. The player has access to all of them, and depending on what he's got planned for the turn, he will select 3 of these action cards. So we'll take a couple of different ones to show you the different types of yeah, that's a good mix there. So I'll take these 3 here. So you select these in secret, and then for the first action step of the turn you select one of them, and you both players reveal their selection at the same time. At the top of the card there's a number from 1 to 7. Whoever's selected the highest number will get to make their actions first. If both numbers are the same, then you have what's called initiative. I'm just looking around to see if I can find, there's an initiative token. One or other of the players will have the initiative, and then I can't find the token at the moment, but basically there's a token that you pass from player to player. So if you both play the same card number, the player with the initiative has the choice of either playing his card first and then handing the initiative token to the opponent, or allowing the opponent to go first and retaining the initiative token. Right, now on to these symbols. So there are 3 different types of symbols, and 2 colours, black and red. So if we can start with this one here. The footprint means that you can activate a group to move. The number tells you how many groups can be moved. So this particular card here would allow me to activate 1 group for movement. This particular card tells me I can activate 4 groups for movement. The reason they are different colours is that if it is a black footprint, that means that you are allowed to move and engage an enemy group in melee. If it's a red footprint, you can only move the figures, but you can't move into contact with the enemy to engage in melee. This symbol here is influence. Now what that means is that you can either make a terror attack on one of your opponent's groups, and if you succeed, then the opponent has to take a stress token. I'll come on to the stress tokens in a moment. Again, there are red and black versions of that. Here's a red version of it. The red version means that you are only allowed to rally off a stress token from your own group. With a black symbol, you can either rally off or you can inflict a stress token on an enemy. So again, red is kind of more passive, black is more aggressive. And then the final symbol that you might come across is the bow and arrow there, and that means that you can shoot. So in this particular case, one group can shoot. And that bow and arrow symbol applies to any kind of shooting, so it could be not just bows, but throwing assegai, firing with a musket or a rifle, any kind of missile attack. Right, so as I say, there are 3 action steps in each turn. For each action step you play one of these cards, and it does mean that you can't play, for instance here, I've got 4 movements, you can't move in the one single action step one group more than once. But it does mean over the course of a turn that you could activate a group for movement there and again there in the second action step. And if you had another footprint over here, you could activate them a 3rd time. So in a single turn you can move quite a long distance. It varies a little bit. Firing, the muskets have a sort of separate rule. So for instance, these guys here armed with muskets. So once you've fired, you have to put a smoke marker down to indicate that they're unloaded, and then in order to load, you then have to play another one of these cards with the shooting symbol, and rather than shoot, you just take the smoke marker off. But as an advantage, on the plus side, if you fire at someone with a musket, then you automatically inflict a stress token on the group that you fired at. Rifles are different, so these guys, the soldiers and the adventurers, are armed with rifles. So you ignore what the figure's actually got. This lady's actually, obviously got a pistol. They're all firing rifles, and the rifles can fire every time and reload immediately. Right. So those are the 7 action cards. You also have, I'll go to this one next, a sorcery card. Now you're only allowed to have a sorcery card if you have a witch doctor in your group. So the forest tribes have got a witch doctor, that guy there. The white men expeditions don't. So the white men expeditions would play without this card for the game. If you have a sorcery card, then you can play this at the end of any action step, so you can play it once per turn. So you keep it in your hand with the action cards that you've selected, the 3 action cards you've selected, and the action card allows you to, the sorcery card allows you to invoke a ritual. And what you do with the ritual, the witch doctors have got, they roll a d8, and you can add to the number of d8s that you roll by taking stress tokens, or by playing what's called a totem card, which again I'll come to in a moment. However, there's one particular stress token that if you draw it from the bag, will automatically cause the ritual to fail and the witch doctor to be struck down dead. So he does run the risk of dying quite rapidly. But if he succeeds, then one success will give you, depending on the ritual, and there are 3 rituals for the forest tribes, There are also not a different 3 for the African Kingdoms faction. 1 success will give you a certain benefit, 2 will give you another even greater one, 3 will get you even more. Sometimes they're inflicting punishment on the enemy, sometimes they're giving you advantages. And that, as I say, that varies between the 2 native factions that are available at the moment. Right, and then finally you have 14 of these cards, which are called Totem cards, and these are a variety of things. You don't pick from them, you have them face down, shuffle the deck, and whenever it's appropriate, whenever you're told to draw a totem card, you take the top one. And they can be played at particular points in the action step. That varies depending on what the card is. Some of them allow you to extend, so the giraffe allows you to extend the range of either firing, movement, or the ritual for the witch doctor, so the range of his influence. I've just remembered I haven't told you something about influence. Let's just go back briefly to the action cards. Yeah, I did. So I forget that. It's me going mad. Right. So the crocodile cards will tell you that you can enhance your dice roll by a certain amount, and this will vary from one crocodile card to another. So this particular one is telling you that you can roll 1 extra. Is that a D8? I haven't got my glasses on. I think that's 1 extra D8. The lion cards allow you to remove 1 stress token. No, they don't want the lion cards. Sorry, apologies for this. I haven't put my glasses on. The lion card allows you to make 1 additional action to whatever is on the action card. So, for instance, if you played it alongside this, you could do another action of any kind, influence, shooting, or movement, but not on one of these 2 groups that you've already activated. The buffalo allows you to remove a stress token, and there are a couple of others in here. This is an initiative totem, so that allows you to automatically call your card value, your action card value 8, so it will preempt the other player's action card even if the other player's card is of a higher value. And I think, oh yeah, there's a gorilla card as well. This is a gorilla card. This allows you to make 2 extra movements with 2 different groups, but as you can see it's in red, so it means that you can't use that card to attack another player. And they are all the totem cards. Now, you also have, sorry, back to here, you play with 3 different types of dice, D6, D8 and D10, and each group will have separate values for their combat, so the dice they roll in melee, their shooting, so the dice they roll when they fire a rifle or a musket, or they shoot an arrow or throw an assegai. And they have another separate value for their bravery, which is what they roll against the terror attacks, so against these attacks, or when they're trying to rally off stress tokens, having played one of these cards as well to rally. And in terms of movement, that's the initiative token there. I knew I left it somewhere. Right, in terms of movement, there are movement sticks which are similar to the sticks that you might have seen if you've played Saga. However, they are different, so don't fall into the trap of thinking that they're the same lengths. The long one, this one here, is the range for rifles, conventional bows, standard bows, and for muskets. The M, so the medium one, is the range of pygmy bows and the range for throwing assegai, I believe. And then you've got 2 short sticks. Now, when you move a group, so let's take this group here at the back, so they'll be on the table all in base-to-base contact. You pick any figure in the group to be the lead figure for the action. So I'm going to choose that one. You put the stick down there, and then you can move him to there. If, when he gets to this point here, or if you're measuring from that point there, if there is no enemy figure anywhere in that arc, then he is allowed to step out. So you're allowed to put another, this is the reason why there are 2 of the same length. You're allowed to put another one down, and then move the figure that you've chosen as the lead to the end, take the sticks away, and then move all the other groups up to join the first one. So that's called stepping out. And you can only do that, as I say, if you're not going to come close to, or you haven't got an enemy group within that original sweep of that movement stick. Right, now onto the stress tokens. So there are a whole load of stress tokens, and you have to put them into a bag, and they're drawn blind. So this is the contents of the bag. Let's sort them out. Right, so the types of stress token you can have. There's one that will reduce your ability to move. If you have one of these footprint tokens, you can't step out. If you have 2, you can't move at all. There are stress tokens that look like this. For every one of these the group has, you take 1 dice away from their throw. So if they're entitled to, say, roll that group there, if they were in a fight, they'd be allowed to roll 5 figures, so they'd be allowed to roll 5 dice of a certain type. If they've got one of these against them, you take off one of those dice, so they only roll 4 dice. You have this one here, which is the terror token. It is a stress token. If you have one of those on the group, then when the enemy play... let's find the card. When the enemy play that card on them, if they play that card on them, they automatically inflict a terror hit each time they play one of those. But if the group has already got a terror token on it, they automatically inflict a second terror hit. So the group has to, in order to avoid the hit, has to roll 2 dice against 2 hits rather than 1 dice against 1. So there's more chance of them getting another. If they fail, they get another stress token, which they draw from the bag. So it's not necessarily going to be another terror token. What do I want to talk? Oh yeah, you also get a shooting stress token. That works in the same way as the melee one, that if they're shooting with their muskets, you take 1 dice away for every token they've got. And you finally have a panic token, which stops you virtually doing anything for the rest of the turn. But at the end of the turn, unlike the other stress tokens that you have to rally off, the red ones come off automatically at the end of each turn. Now, a group can only have 4 stress tokens on it, so if you reach the limit, that means that if you're obliged to take another one, you have to flee instead. You can only flee once in the same turn, so if it happens again in the same turn and you have to take another stress token, then you lose a figure. And I think that is basically the main components of the game. So what I'll do now, I'll show you the setup for the scenario of the game we played. Right, so all the games are played on a 4 foot by 3 surface. So I've had to put down some corner markers to represent a 4 foot by 3 playing area, and these also are the starting points in this scenario for the two columns. So one column comes on two opposite diagonal corners, and the other column comes on from the other two. Now this particular scenario is called King of the Apes, and it involves a gorilla called Kong, who is inhabiting a lair in the centre of the table. The lair is supposed to be a circular area, but I've got this square, 1 foot square area, which is not too dissimilar in size. The circle is meant to have a radius of 6 inches, so I didn't think it made a vast difference to the game, because it's only delineating the area that the gorilla can't leave. Despite appearances, it's open terrain, so all the trees on this are just decorative. I can't move them off, but I thought it made quite a nice lair for the game. Around the lair are 4 totem poles. Now they, if touched or if contacted by any group from the White Men Expeditions, it allows the White Men Expeditions player to draw an additional totem card. On the native tribes, the Forest Tribes faction, if there isn't a White Men Expeditions group within the gorilla's lair at the end of a turn, then the native, the Forest Tribes faction is allowed to draw a totem card. So there's sort of balance there. There are 5 areas of what is called high dangerous terrain. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, when a group enters dangerous terrain, it has to roll a dice to see what the danger is that it's encountered. You roll on a table depending on whether you're playing in the jungle or in savannah. So this particular scenario is played in a jungle. So this is the dangerous terrain table. You can either call the terrain D8 or D10. I've called them D10 for this scenario. So you roll a dice, see what the number is that you rolled, then roll again to see what the particular outcome is. There are also, up to you how many you put on. I've put on 4 areas of blocking terrain. These can't be moved into at all, so they are literally blocking the movement of your groups. Although they look fairly high, they aren't. They're just to stop you moving into them. You can see over them, shoot over them. The only thing you can't do is move over them. And the object of the game is the White Men Expedition group have to capture Kong, and to do that he has 8 lives, and they have to whittle down his lives. The final life has to be taken in melee. Any other loss and he dies, and the Forest Tribes win, because his spirit will then remain in the jungle. So the Forest Tribes win if the gorilla dies. The White Men Expeditions win if he's captured, and if it comes down to points at the end, it's sometime in turn 7 the game will end, and if it has come down to points, then you score victory points. The White Men Expeditions score them for taking lives off of Kong. The Forest Tribes score them for eliminating enemy groups. Now, because the White Men Expeditions have got the reporter, this guy here. If he's alive at the end of the game, then they can, I think it's treble the number of points that they score. So there is an advantage to keeping this guy alive. Yeah, that's another rule. So say he was attached to this group here. When this group suffers casualties, if you have a character attached to the group, you have to roll a d10, which is called a terrifying death roll, and if you score a 1, the character is killed. And you can remove him anyway. You can choose to take him off as a casualty. It's up to you. But as I say, in this particular game, keeping him alive will give you more victory points. And I think that's everything I need to discuss. So that was the sort of preamble that I couldn't get done during the game. Oh yeah, Kong, sorry, the only other thing I think is Kong is controlled by the forest tribes, so he's activated by them in the same way as the groups are, so with action cards. And he rolls d8s for cover, despite the fact he's not in cover, so he rolls d8s to save against shooting, and he rolls 1d8 in combat for every life he has. So really what the White Man Expeditions have to do is chop off about 5 of his lives, so he's only rolling 3 dice, and then move in for a melee to capture him at the end. So on to the game, to show you how it went.